Verse 7. Whoever corrects a mocker invites insults. Whoever rebukes the wicked incurs abuse. Do not rebuke mockers, or they will hate you. Rebuke the wise, and they will love you. Have you ever known somebody who was incredibly disrespectful toward anybody who tried to do right? Now, I'm not talking about somebody who just made fun of somebody for trying to live the Christian life, or, you tried to say something, he said, okay, Reverend, or something like that. But I'm talking about somebody who mocks at faith, who treats believers with contempt and ridicule and derision, those people who are vicious and personal in their attacks. If you have met somebody like that, you have met, depending on the translation of the Bible that you read, the NIV calls them a mocker, the New American Standard calls them a scoffer, the King James calls them a scorner. Next question. Have you ever tried to talk to that person and reason with them? What reaction did you get? More ridicule? More derision? Then you have met a mocker. I've told you before about the guy that I worked with for a while. And I'm convinced that when he knew he was going to be assigned to work with me, his goal that day was to see how much stuff he could bring up negative toward Christianity and Christians and faith and church, and just delighted in making my day miserable. There are people like that. You may know them. That they just have a contempt for people of faith. They make fun of faith. And no matter what you try to do to reason with them, you get the same attitude back. Now, we've seen a lot of that in our society in recent months. But mockers are not new to our generation. Solomon knew about them. And he gives us some very strong and very practical advice on how to relate to them. And this is a tough passage to talk about. And some of you who are kind and loving and merciful, kinder than me and more merciful than me, are going to argue with me all the way through this message. So I'm just trying to tell you, this is what Solomon said on how to recognize a mocker and how to relate to them. Now, the Hebrew word that's translated mocker or scoffer or scorner is spelled in the English L-U-T-S. And it literally means to make a mouth at. What? To make a mouth at? What are they sticking out their tongue at you? What is it that they're doing? But I found out that, for instance, you should read 1 Samuel 17. It's the account of David and Goliath. But you should pay close attention to the trash talk that goes on between David and Goliath. Goliath says, "Come on, you little wimp," and David said, "I'm going to feed your head to the birds." And you just read it and say, "Whoa, wait a minute." Well, that's what this word means, to make a mouth at. Basically, what would happen is, a lot of times, nobody wanted to be the first one to wage the battle. And so they would just stand like David and Goliath did, just trash talking each other. Your mama is, whatever, just smashing each other verbally until finally somebody said, "I've had enough of your mouth," and, the rock flew or the spear threw, and the battle was joined. So that's the origin of this word mocker, to make a mouth at. So it came to be someone who treated someone with ridicule and mockery, to express contempt by derision, to disdain their opinions because you think that they're not worthy, and to be very self-conscious that you are better than they are. It's somebody who mocks somebody else, especially those who scoff at religion and those who try to live for God. They make a mockery of sin They make a mockery of God's judgments. It has with it the idea of making fun of faith. It's the word that David uses in Psalm 1, don't sit in the seat of the scornful. Warren Wiersbe puts it this way: scorners think they know everything, and anybody who tries to teach them is only wasting time. Scorners can't find wisdom even if they seek for it, because learning God's truth demands a humble mind and an obedient will. What scorners lack in knowledge, they make up for in arrogance. Instead of sensibly discussing a matter with those who could teach them, they only sneer at truth and deny it. Having no intellectual or spiritual ammunition, the scorner depends on ridicule and contempt to fight his enemies. Now, through the book of Proverbs, Solomon gives us some characteristics of mockers, scorners, scoffers. And these are the verses that I have in your notes. Proverbs 13:1. A wise son heeds his father's instructions, but a mocker does not respond to rebukes. A mocker is always right. 3 words that a mocker never says: I was wrong. They're always right. You can't convince them. Doesn't matter what. They are always right. The verses that we read in chapter 9, verse 7, whoever corrects a mocker invites insults. Again, it's that disdain and contempt for other people. There's no respect for anybody's views. Instead of trying to engage in discussion, they belittle you, they insult you, they mock you. Whoever corrects a mocker invites insults. It's a combination of arrogance and disdain and contempt. And it says if you rebuke mockers, they will hate you. Someone has said that when you dig down deep enough in one of these mockers, you will find that they are filled with hatred and anger. Not necessarily at you, they're just angry, hateful people. Chapter 21, verse 24 says, the proud and arrogant person, mocker is his name, behaves with insolent fury. The proud and arrogant. There's that arrogance, pride, anger in the characteristics of a mocker. Chapter 1, verse 22 says, how long will mockers delight in mockery? They take great joy, in making fun of faith. They take great joy in tearing somebody down with derision and ridicule. And chapter 29, verse 8 says, mockers stir up a city. They just keep things stirred up. They keep people stirred up, and they're not content until all peace has been ruined. Those are the characteristics of a mocker. So I ask you again, have you ever run into some people like that? Well, the scripture tells us that being a mocker has consequences. Chapter 9, verse 12. If you're wise, your wisdom will reward you. If you are a mocker, you alone will suffer. Now, this is kind of interesting. When I studied that verse, the alone means the mocker will be by themselves. That when that mocker begins to reap what they have sown, they will suffer alone. Because Proverbs chapter 24, the last part of verse 9 says, people detest a mocker. Now, that doesn't seem always to be true, because mockers tend to move in packs. There seems to be, they find each other. And it's amazing in organizations, including churches, to watch somebody who is a mocker come into an organization or a church and find the other people who are wired up that way. I mean, it's an amazing thing to watch. But what happens is, eventually, people other than the mockers get tired of it. And they say, this person, they're not a nice person. They're not somebody I want to be around. And so as a result of that, they begin to be isolated. And when they begin to suffer the consequences of their mockery, there's nobody with them that cares about them enough to take care of them, because mockers eventually turn on each other. But by far, the worst consequence of being a mocker, Proverbs chapter 3, verse 34, God mocks proud mockers. Somebody says he scorns the scorners. The worst consequence of being a mocker is when God mocks you. And we looked at this passage quite a while ago, but if you have a way to do it, turn to Proverbs chapter 1. I remember an evangelist preaching about this passage decades ago, and it's one of the most sobering passages of Scripture. Proverbs chapter 1. When the Bible says God is going to mock those who mock, this is a description of what happens starting in verse 24. But since you refuse to listen when I call, and no one pays attention when I stretch out my hand, since you disregard all my advice and do not accept my rebuke, all right, there's the definition of a mocker, I in turn will laugh when disaster strikes you. I will mock when calamity overtakes you. When calamity overtakes you like a storm, when disaster sweeps over you like a whirlwind, when distress and trouble overwhelm you, then they will call to me, but I will not answer. They will look for me, but will not find me. How incredibly sobering is that? That if you live your life in constant rebellion against God and mocking the things of God, when you get in serious enough trouble that you want to cry out to him, he says, sorry. They will call to me, I will not answer. They will look for me, but will not find me, because since they hated knowledge and did not choose to fear the Lord, since they would not accept my advice and spurned my rebuke, they will eat the fruit of their ways and be filled with the fruit of their schemes. For the waywardness of the simple will kill them. The complacency of fools will destroy them. But whoever listens to me will live in safety and be at ease without fear of harm. Oh. Now, those of us compassionate, loving, merciful kind of people, when mockers start to experience God's judgment, we try to protect them from it. Because we say, oh, no. Just give them another chance. Just give them another chance. But the most serious consequence of being a mocker or a scorner is when God turns the tables onto you. So then, in our daily lives, when we run into people that meet these qualifications of a scorner, and again, it's not just somebody who says, you Christians are crazy. It's that deep-seated anger and hatred. How do you respond to it? Proverbs chapter 15, verse 12. Mockers resent correction, so they avoid the wise. Back to the verses we looked at in chapter 9, verses 7 and 8. Whoever corrects a mocker invites insults. Whoever rebukes or corrects the wicked incurs abuse. Don't rebuke mockers, they will hate you. Rebuke the wise, they will love you. Do you hear what Solomon says? Don't try to correct them. Don't try to teach them better. You're just inviting more insults and more scoffing at you. That's so hard because it doesn't seem to be Christian, right? So, no. You don't understand. If I talk to them, it'll make a difference, If I can get them to read this book, if I can get them to see Pastor Ken, if I can get them to church, everything will be different. If I could just reason with them, if I could just show them lovingly where they're wrong. Some of you have tried that, and you know what's happened. It just got thrown back in your face because they are a mocker. And that's one of the ways you can tell. If you want, is this person really a serious seeker, or are they just a mocker? Try to engage them in reasonable conversation. Their reaction to you will tell you. Don't waste your time. That's what Solomon says. Solomon says, well, except for the few of you who are really, really special, if you correct a mocker, you invite insults. Don't rebuke them or they'll hate you. He says, just don't rebuke them. They're going to hate you. It seems so harsh. But Jesus taught the same principle. Matthew chapter 7, verse 6. Do not give what is holy to dogs, and do not throw your pearls before swine, or they will trample them under your feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Now, he's not talking about physical dogs and physical pigs. He's talking about when you're trying to correct a mocker, someone whose characteristic is they are full of hatred and anger and contempt for anything of faith. If you try to give what is holy to them, not only are they going to trample it, they're going to turn on you. He says the same thing, and if you want to, you can turn to Matthew 10, or you can just listen to me read it to you. Matthew chapter 10, starting in verse 11. I'm trying to show you that Jesus followed Solomon's principles here. Matthew 10, verse 11. Talking to his disciples as he gets ready to send them out. Whatever town or village you enter, search there for some worthy person, and stay at their house until you leave. As you enter the home, give it your greeting. If the home is deserving, let your peace rest on it. If it's not, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, stay there as long as you have to until you can convince them that God is true. It's not what it says. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, leave that home or town and shake the dust off your feet. Truly I tell you, it will be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. If you study where Jesus spent the vast majority of his time and energy, it was with those who were honestly seeking the kingdom. He had no time for the people who demonstrated themselves to be mockers and scoffers. We've already looked at chapter 29, verse 8. Mockers stir up a city. The reason I repeat that verse is because you need to understand chapter 22, verse 10. Drive out the mocker, and out goes strife. Quarrels and insults are ended. Leave it to Gene Peterson in The Message. Kick out the troublemakers and things will quiet down. You need a break from bickering and griping. Amen. Some of you are going to quote that verse in your prayer at your next family reunion. But we all know that's true. Kick out the troublemakers and things will quiet down. And you need a break from bickering and griping. This is so critically important because too often in our churches we give prominent places to the mockers. They make so much noise and cause so much trouble that we give them the opportunity to spread that arrogance and hostility because we want to win them over and we want to keep the peace, but there's no peace until they're gone. Kyle and Delish, who are the classic Hebrew scholars, write this. Once a person has been revealed who treats religious questions without respect, moral questions in a frivolous way, serious things in jest, and in his scornful spirit places himself above the duty of showing reverence and respect, there will arise ceaseless contentions and conflicts. Such a man one ought to chase away. Then there will immediately go forth along with him dispeace. It's kind of an interesting classical word. I've never heard the word dispeace, but it kind of sums it up, doesn't it? There will then be rest from strife and disgrace. I learned this lesson the hard way. If they want to go, let them go. If you ever try to talk somebody who's not happy into staying at the church because you need their tithe or you need their gift, you're going to resent it, and so will they. And you will rue the day when you ask them to stay. If they want to go, let them go. That's what Solomon says. Drive out the mocker. Out goes strife, quarrels, and insults are ended. Told y'all are going to argue with me. I'm just telling you what Solomon says. So the consequence of being a mocker, because part of the importance of this lesson today is not just sitting here saying, oh yeah, they're a mocker, they're a mocker, they're a mocker. It's to say, Lord, don't let me become one. Don't let me become so spiritually self-righteous that I become someone who is a scorner myself. Because in Proverbs 3 verse 34, he scorns the scorners, but the rest of that verse, he gives grace to the lowly. And that word means humble. And the heart of humility, biblically speaking, is a recognition of our need of God. It's the direct opposite of being a mocker. Being a mocker think they know it all and they don't have time. Being a person of humility and meekness means, God, I need thee every hour. You know, I can't do this without you. I'm nothing without you. That's the opposite of being a mocker. That's the spirit we need to develop in our lives, because God gives grace to the humble. And we sang about that amazing grace today. So I'm just going to leave that with you. That's what the Word says. You can apply it in your own life as you choose to. But just two closing thoughts. When you encounter mockers, dig out these notes and read the scriptures for yourself. Do your study. Remember what Solomon says how to deal with them. But secondly, let's make sure we don't develop those same attitudes. You know, you can become a mocker toward a mocker. You know, that's God's job. But recognize our need for God and receive the overflow of His love in His amazing grace. Lord, I need you. I need you to teach me. I need to learn. I need to have that teachable spirit so that you can teach me your truth so that I can live under your grace, not under God's mocking. Let's pray. Father, this is a tough subject. And Solomon has given us so many different verses about it. And Jesus, you yourself demonstrated it in your life, how we are to respond. Not when people have questions, but when people demonstrate themselves to have the character of a mocker or a scorner. Lord, help us to have wisdom and help us to know what we need to do in those situations. And Lord, most of all, may we not develop that hardness. May we not develop that arrogance. May we live our lives in humble dependence on you. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. May we live our lives acknowledging our need for you and reveling in the fact that you are with us, that you are our provider, that you do give us our daily bread. Each day you give us what we need for that day. We thank you for that. So Lord, may we live our lives as a testimony of your grace and your love. May that love flow out from us that others may see Jesus in us, I pray. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine on you and give you his peace now and evermore. Amen. God bless you. Thanks for coming out today.